released one EP.
And this is your second one.
Volume 1.
Yeah.
So then there will be a Volume 2.
Grace VanderWaal's rise to fame was meteoric, but behind her 12-year-old debut on America's Got Talent was a young girl thrust into a chaotic world she never expected. From the moment she strummed her ukulele and sang "I Don't Know My Name," she captivated millions with her quirky charm and raw vulnerability. That golden buzzer moment didn't just catapult her to stardom, it sealed a version of herself in the public's imagination. But the very thing that made Grace a sensation became the weight she carried for years, a persona locked in time. Her identity was now tethered to a single performance, a single look, and a single moment when she hadn't even decided what kind of artist she wanted to be. The fame hit like a wave, and Grace, barely a teenager, was expected to surf it with grace. But the tide dragged her deeper into emotional isolation. Her childhood was replaced with press tours, studio sessions, and the unrelenting spotlight of public scrutiny. She wasn't just America's darling, she was its possession. While the world celebrated her voice, Grace was silently grieving her lost anonymity. As the applause echoed louder, the silence behind closed doors became deafening. She had everything: awards, recognition, record deals, but also carried the invisible scars of accelerated fame. Her story reminds us, when a child becomes a brand, the price is never just fame, it's the erosion of innocence. That's a tragedy fame rarely warns you about. Grace's family played a central role in anchoring her through the chaos, yet even their unwavering support couldn't shield her completely. Her mother Tina was her constant companion, escorting her to every interview, rehearsal, and tour during her early fame. Her father, a cultured and curious man, imbued Grace with an open worldview, while her siblings brought the sense of normalcy she desperately needed. Grace always credited them with keeping her grounded. Her sister, selfless and hardworking, was her rock, and her mischievous brother brought laughter amid the stress. However, as protective as they were, fame still slithered through the cracks. Grace's transformation from a quiet, suffering girl to a global phenomenon happened so quickly that even her closest loved ones struggled to keep up. They watched as the little girl who loved to write quirky songs in her room became a target for tabloids and online critics. Though they fought to preserve her childhood, the machine of celebrity often outpaced their efforts. Grace's public vulnerability contrasted with the intense efforts behind the scenes to maintain her privacy. Her family's presence helped buffer the emotional impact, but the invasive glare of fame was relentless. Grace has spoken often about the duality she lived: a warm home filled with love and a cold world outside waiting to judge her every move. Her family's love became both a shield and a mirror, reflecting the girl they knew and the star the world demanded. This contrast became her emotional battleground, and it shaped her journey deeply. Grace VanderWaal's career post-AGT skyrocketed, but with it came a twisted paradox. The more she succeeded, the more people refused to let her grow. After winning America's Got Talent in 2016, she performed at iconic venues, headlined festivals, and joined mega tours with Imagine Dragons and Florence and the Machine. She released hit EPs, topped Billboard charts, and garnered prestigious awards including MTV Europe Music and Billboard Women in Music honors. Yet, despite her accolades, fans clung to the image of the whimsical 12-year-old with bangs and a ukulele. As Grace entered her teenage years and naturally began to change, physically, artistically, emotionally, she was met with resistance. Every evolution was seen not as growth but as rebellion. The public fixation on her innocence made her feel trapped in a character that no longer existed. Instead of celebrating her maturity, critics dissected her every move, hairstyle, and lyric. She wasn't allowed the privacy of a normal adolescence. When she dyed her hair or experimented with punk aesthetics, some claimed she was spiraling. But in truth, she was simply becoming herself. It's a suffocating paradox. The same audience that lifted her up wanted her frozen in time. Fame made her a brand. Growing up made her a problem. This disconnect created a constant tension between authenticity and public expectation. Grace didn't reject her past, she just didn't want to be defined by it. But many couldn't accept that. In their eyes, Grace wasn't a person evolving, she was a nostalgia project losing its shine. That distortion nearly broke her. Beneath her public accomplishments, Grace carried emotional wounds that often went unseen but deeply shaped her reality. She has described the years following her AGT win as suffocating and isolating, admitting that she would cry behind closed doors, unable to voice her distress. Her Teen Vogue interview offered a raw glimpse into her internal struggle. "I realized more than pain, I just was dragging this little girl everywhere I went." These words captured the haunting disconnect between who she was and who the world wanted her to be. Grace wasn't just fighting external pressure, she was battling the emotional fragmentation that came with early fame. She confessed to feeling guilty for her sadness, guilty that she couldn't enjoy her success, and guilty that she felt detached from moments the world deemed magical. Over time, this emotional turbulence metastasized into a mental health crisis. Her insecurities, intensified by fame, led her to question her self-worth. Public comparisons to her younger self became unbearable. She was no longer a prodigy in the world's eyes, just a girl struggling to keep up with her own legend. This emotional split became a source of anxiety, panic attacks, and creative paralysis. And while the spotlight celebrated her achievements, the shadows told a different story, one of silence, shame, and suppressed identity. Grace has admitted that much of her music was born from this pain, not as therapy, but as an attempt to understand her chaos. What the world saw as art, for Grace, was survival, and it wasn't always enough. Grace's public transformation became a lightning rod for scrutiny, especially as her appearance evolved dramatically in the years following her AGT win. Fans first saw her as the sweet, unassuming girl with choppy bangs and a soft voice. But as she embraced adolescence, her fashion and hairstyle choices became bolder. Platinum blonde hair, followed by a pink phase, and finally a shaved head in 2020 sparked intense speculation. While some celebrated her boldness, others whispered about a possible meltdown. But Grace had long dreamed of shaving her head. It wasn't impulsive, it was liberating. Still, her every transformation was dissected. People clung to the image of her as a child, and viewed her changes as betrayal or collapse. Grace found herself cornered by a public that wanted her to remain a living time capsule. These changes weren't cries for help, they were attempts to reclaim her narrative, but the backlash was swift. Online forums erupted with rumors of substance abuse, mental illness, and rebellion. Few paused to consider that maybe she was just growing up. In response, Grace released the song "Don't Assume What You Don't Know" in 2021, directly addressing the relentless judgment, but the damage was done. Her image had been commandeered by strangers, and her efforts to assert autonomy were misinterpreted as instability. This created a vicious cycle. She changed to find herself, and the public punished her for it. Yet she never apologized for evolving. She made it clear, she wasn't here to appease outdated expectations. Her journey was hers alone, messy and magnificent. Through it all, Grace used music as her emotional exorcism. Each song became a confessional, revealing the wounds she hid from public view. In her 2025 album Chillar, she embraced the trauma she once avoided. Songs like "Fade" and "Don't Assume What You Don't Know" weren't crafted for commercial success. They were her way of coping. Grace even admitted she was scared the album would destroy her. "I thought I would get messed up while working on Chillar, because my whole life I've avoided thinking about it for so long." But instead, the process was cathartic. It became the most honest reflection of who she was and how far she'd come. After therapy sessions that left her raw and reflective, she wrote about her reluctance to heal, because healing felt like erasing the past. Her music became her memory bank, where every lyric preserved a scar, a joy, or a question. This wasn't about radio hits, it was about reclaiming voice and agency. In a world obsessed with her image, her music allowed her to speak unfiltered. Grace didn't just write songs, she bled into them. That's what made them resonate so deeply. Critics might debate the aesthetics, but her fans felt the truth. Chillar wasn't an album, it was a reckoning. It marked her refusal to be silenced or simplified, and in doing so she reminded everyone, pain can be art and survival can be beautiful. Music didn't just save her career, it saved her spirit. Despite the healing power of music, Grace VanderWaal faced an emotional minefield as she pushed to reinvent herself beyond what people remembered. Becoming a mental health advocate wasn't a strategic career move, it was a necessity born from pain. With growing visibility on social media, she began openly discussing depression, anxiety, and identity. Her song "Moonlight," inspired by a friend's battle with depression, resonated deeply and quickly amassed millions of views. She posted barefaced photos and honest captions, challenging toxic beauty standards and urging fans to embrace imperfection. For Grace, advocacy wasn't about brand building, it was survival storytelling. She had to dismantle the toxic myths wrapped around fame and perfection to protect herself and others. This vulnerability drew in fans who saw themselves in her pain. She made it clear that mental illness wasn't shameful, and healing didn't look perfect. Instead of chasing chart toppers, she chased authenticity. In doing so, she stepped into a leadership role in conversations about youth, identity, and emotional resilience. Yet, being vulnerable also made her a lightning rod for criticism. The same honesty that drew fans also opened her up to misinterpretation. Still, she stayed the course, using every platform as a tool for education and self-expression. Grace proved that even in a culture obsessed with perfection, imperfection can be powerful. Her courage to speak when others stayed silent made her not just an artist, but a voice for a generation struggling to be seen. Grace's 2025 release of Chillar wasn't just another album, it was her manifesto. She warned critics that the themes would be heavy and uncomfortable, and she wasn't exaggerating. The album addressed depression, childhood trauma, disillusionment with fame, and the loneliness of being misunderstood. Grace had no interest in making radio-friendly hits. She called out the music industry's demand for palatable emotions, and refused to sanitize her pain for commercial gain. Every lyric on the album was a protest against being silenced. Songs like Fade and I Don't Wanna Heal weren't just catharsis, they were declarations. Grace even admitted she didn't want to let go of her sadness, because that would mean pretending the pain never existed. Her vulnerability became a weapon, wielded with intention. She exposed the raw truth of what it means to grow up famous and emotionally fractured. The album's unconventional sound and structure defied pop expectations, further distancing her from the bubblegum image the world once loved. It polarized audiences. Some found it jarring, while others called it the most important work of her career. But Grace didn't flinch. For her, the goal wasn't comfort, it was honesty. Chillar cemented her evolution from prodigy to provocateur. It was messy, poetic, and undeniably real. It didn't beg for validation. It dared listeners to sit with discomfort. In doing so, Grace shattered the mold and redefined what success looks like for young artists. Beyond music, Grace discovered a new love: acting. Her debut in the Disney Plus musical film Stargirl revealed a softer side of her talent, allowing her to explore narrative storytelling in ways music couldn't. She played Susan Stargirl, Caraway, a quirky, heartfelt character not unlike herself. Grace also contributed original songs to the film, blending her two artistic passions. The experience was transformative. It gave her the space to be creative without the intense pressure of music industry expectations. She later reprised her role in the sequel, Hollywood Stargirl, deepening her comfort in front of the camera. Acting became a quiet sanctuary, where she could explore identity outside of her fame. It also introduced her to a different kind of audience, one that knew her not for her AGT roots but for her work on screen. This allowed her to step out of the child star box and build a more nuanced image. The structured nature of film sets, the guidance of directors, and the collaborative environment gave Grace a sense of security and purpose. She thrived under these conditions, and while she doesn't intend to abandon music, acting has become a crucial piece of her evolving artistic identity. It showed her in the world that she's more than a singer. She's a storyteller, an actor, and a creative force refusing to be defined by a single talent or era. Living in New York City offered Grace a fresh start and a more grounded life. Far from the Hollywood glitz, she found solace in anonymity. She walked the streets unnoticed, wrote music in cafes, and spent time cooking, an unexpected but fulfilling new hobby. The urban buzz gave her inspiration without the invasive attention. She also dove into music production, learning how to engineer and produce her own work. This gave her full control over her sound, allowing her to experiment with rock, punk, and alternative genres that reflected her inner chaos. Her creativity wasn't bound by industry trends. It was driven by emotion. She built a small home studio, surrounded herself with positive people, and learned to say no to toxic environments. Her social media became a tool for curation, not validation. She blocked negativity without hesitation. Grace even admitted she had to step back from reading comments because they triggered harmful comparisons. In this quieter, more intentional life, she's rediscovered joy. She no longer tries to fit into the public's idea of who she should be. She's written dozens of unreleased songs and hinted at upcoming film projects. Every decision now runs through one filter. Does it make her feel alive? That self-awareness is the armor she never had at 12. Grace has finally built a life that nourishes her instead of exploiting her. and that, in many ways, is her greatest success yet. Grace VanderWaal's journey has been filled with accolades and agony, applause and alienation. But through every peak and valley, she's emerged with a stronger sense of who she is. The girl once labeled the next Taylor Swift has become something more radical herself. She doesn't seek to dominate charts or appease critics. She seeks truth, whether through her stripped-down music, bold fashion choices, or emotional transparency. Grace has made it clear she won't be boxed in. She now lives with intention, choosing authenticity over approval. Her fame may have started with a golden buzzer, but her legacy will be written by the choices she makes next. That journey from viral sensation to visionary artist isn't just rare, it's revolutionary. Grace stands as a blueprint for how to survive fame without losing your soul. She reminds us that evolution is messy but necessary. That pain, when embraced, can fuel purpose, and that being misunderstood is often the price of being original. Grace didn't just grow up, she grew wise, and that wisdom now echoes through every note she sings, every role she takes, and every bold step she makes. As Grace looks to the future, her focus is clear. She wants to create on her own terms and help others feel less alone. She has spoken about developing a foundation for youth mental health awareness and plans to write a memoir chronicling her roller coaster ride from AGT to adulthood. She also hopes to collaborate with artists who share her passion for raw storytelling. Her biggest dream isn't another award, it's impact. She wants her music to be a refuge, her films to be invitations to empathy, and her story to be a beacon for others navigating fame, trauma, or self-discovery. Grace knows she may never completely escape the shadow of her childhood stardom, but she's no longer afraid of it. She's learned to integrate it into her identity, rather than run from it. Her latest unreleased demos hint at a richer, darker sound, one that captures both the ache and beauty of becoming. She's found peace in the chaos and grace in her grief. And while the world may still see her as the girl with a ukulele, she now sees herself as something far more powerful, a survivor, a creator, and a voice that will not be silenced. The tragic end they predicted was just a rebirth, and Grace VanderWaal is just getting started.